Hello and welcome. Today, I'm going to be talking about how to write a full song with just a melody in mind, or how to turn your melody idea into a full song. That means I'll be showing you hacks on how to find the BPM or beats per minute or tempo of your song, the key of your song, the chords to put under your melody, and other counter melodies you can add, or other melodies you can add for your bassline, piano, guitar, or anything really. All of this without the need for prior music theory knowledge. Plus, I will be giving you some extra tips, the steps that you need in order to make your song starting with a melody, and I'll be making a song along with you. So, after this video, you'll be able to make amazing and share-worthy songs using your most creative melodies. So let's get to it. So I'll just go straight to the point. If you want to write a full song but you only have a melody in mind and you don't know where to start, just follow these steps until you have a fully produced song. Or, if you're using a guitar or a piano to write your song, these steps will still help you in creating chords and melodies without needing to know any music theory. Step 1. Laying out what you have. In this step, you need to first find your BPM and then draw your melody in a DAW or digital audio workspace such as GarageBand. But if this doesn't apply to you, you can just skip the step. What is BPM? BPM stands for beats per minute. It basically tells you the tempo or how fast or slow a song is. It helps guide the drums and the beats and basically the rhythm altogether. How will you find your BPM? Option 1. You can use the metronome in your DAW or GarageBand. It looks something like this. And then feel around for it and just change it to your liking. But nobody's got time for that, right? Option 2. Use this app called BPM Detect. With this app, all you have to do is sing a bit to your melody and then tap your phone to the beat. Then, it'll tell you the BPM you should use. So here's an example using a melody I made the other day. Da, 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 da. So it says I should make my melody about 107.8 or 108 beats per minute. After that, you have to draw in or play your melody into your DAW or digital audio workspace such as GarageBand. Why do we do this? Well, so we don't forget all of our wonderful melody ideas and so we can see the notes and note names more easily. Here's an example of me recording my chorus melody into my song. Tips! First, do it by section. You can do the verse melody first, then the chorus melody, then the pre-chorus. It doesn't matter which order, just do it section by section. Second, take into consideration the counting, the 1, 2, 3, 4 of the metronome. Don't start too early or too late. Third, quantize your notes, which means depending on the setting, 1/16th for example, it'll snap all of your notes to the nearest 1/16th note. If that makes sense. I usually use 1/16th. It basically makes it cleaner and more to the beat of the song. To quantize your melody, all you have to do is press your track here, press this area, Command A, and then press 1/16th note. So it snaps everything to the beat. Step 2. Find the key of your song. What are keys? Keys are basically groups of notes that will sound good together and they're named by a certain note. For example, key of G. So for further explanation, but you don't need to worry about it now, the difference between keys are just which notes are sharps. So the key of G has an F sharp, but that's different from the key of D, which has an F sharp and a C sharp. And sharps are just like the black keys in the piano. But you don't need to worry about that now. Why do we need to find the key? Well, we need to find the keys so that we'll be able to make chords and other melodies later. But there's an easy way or a hack to find the key of your song. All you have to do is use a piano, GarageBand, or a guitar to write down all the notes that you used in your melody. Then, input it into this website, scales-chords.com, I'll link it down below, and it'll find the key for you. There may be many options in the site, but I suggest you use the ones that say major or minor. The major key sounds happier and the minor key sounds sadder, so you can just choose between the two of those, but disregard the rest of the keys. If you don't like that hack, just test out different chords one at a time under your whole melody, and whichever feels the most right, use it. So these were the notes that I found in the melody that I used, and I just found them out by pressing the notes on the DAW, and now I'm just going to enter each of those notes into this website and find out my key. So now I know I'm in the key of E major. If you notice you have notes that don't fit into anything or stray away from your key, you may want to change some and make sure your notes are in the same key. Some songs out there change key, but if you're a beginner, it's way easier to just use one key. Step 3. beats. Now that you have your BPM, your notes drawn in, and your key, it may help to add the beat that you want already into the different parts. Why? Usually, your beat is the backbone of your song, and it sets the vibe for the lyrics and musical composition that you're gonna put into it. Plus, it's easier to feel for the beat now, especially in the early stages of your song. For beats, you usually have a kick, a snare, and maybe a hi-hat. The kick is the really low drum, the snare is the one that sounds like a clap. You can actually use a clap if you want, and the hi-hats are the little cymbal sounds that glue everything together. For beats, you can either use other songs as reference or you can use your gut. Or if you want, there are these things called loops which you can download off the internet. Just make sure they're within your BPM. Sometimes they're in your dot too, like this. Tip: for a basic beat, the kick drum is usually in the first and third count of a bar, or each of the 4 counts, and the snare is usually on the second and fourth. But if you really listen to music and you can clap to it, this should come naturally. So here's me playing a bit of the beat that I envisioned. Step 4. Set up the framework of your song. For this step, you basically have to solidify or concretize the different sections or parts of your song into your DAW, or on a piece of paper if you're not using a DAW, just to keep it clean, you know? Okay, so for this part, it may help to write things out per bar. To make things simpler, a bar is basically or usually a count of 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's found in this part of your DAW. Sometimes it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 for waltz songs, or there are many other types of key signatures, but let's just stick to 1, 2, 3, 4, since that's usually the count for most pop songs. So just write the different sections out per bar, and I have an example right here. This is what I did for my song. Yay! Now we have the official backbone of our song. Step 5. Adding your chords. Okay, this one might be the trickiest part. The chords that you add, by the way, can be played with a piano, guitar, a flute, bells, violin, or anything really. But in most pop songs, the chords that are behind the melody are usually played with a piano, a synth, a pad, or sometimes an organ. First mini step, take the key that you established earlier, mine was E major, and then write down all the chords in that key. For this, you can use the website pianokeyboardguide.com, I'm gonna link it below, or you can just search key of blank, for example key of F sharp, in Google Images until you see a photo like this. So I just checked the chords in my key right here, and then I wrote them down right here. So I have a guide. Second mini step, write down each of the notes inside of those chords under those chords, like this. You can use your piano keyboard guide or whatever you searched in Google Images as your guide. Not minding the diminished chord, I wrote down all the notes in each of the chords. Like this. Next, figure out in your head where you want to place the chords. Chord placings could make a big difference. Here's an example of me doing it. Chord. 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 You can do this by ear, by simply using the feel of the melody. Next, for each section of the melody that needs a chord, which you established earlier with the chord placings, write down for each section or group all of the notes. Then what you do with those notes is you look for similar notes in the chords that you wrote down earlier. And those chords with similar notes are your chord choices. Those are now the chords you can use. It's that simple. Okay, so I'm gonna put this chart up here on the screen so you can see, but basically, I'm now checking based on my sections what notes there are in each of the sections, so I could find the chord that best suits it. So, for example, this part has an E and a B, so I'm thinking since it's the start of the whole phrase, maybe it should be an E chord, right? Okay, then this is the next chord. I realize there's also an E and a B, but there's also an A and a G sharp. So what has an E, a B, an A, or a G sharp here? So I was thinking, since it ends on the G sharp, there's a B and a G sharp in G sharp minor. And it sounds like it would sound good with it. So I was thinking G sharp minor for the next chord. Next. So it's E, B. So what chord would fit here? I was thinking maybe an A. But then it sounded too happy to me, so I was thinking maybe a C sharp minor. Okay, for the last chord, I was thinking since there's not much there, just the A note, I was thinking just use the A chord since we weren't able to use that chord earlier. So my final chord progression for my verse is E, G sharp minor, C sharp minor, and A. So it goes like this. So following the same logic, seeing that these were the notes in the pre-chorus, but they mostly started on E and C sharp, this is what I wanted to do. So I was thinking, start with an E without a B, to go to the C sharp minor, then an E with a B, then a simple B in the empty space. Then repeat. You might still be a bit confused, so here are just some things you need to remember. Mini tip number 1. Sometimes there are going to be 2 or 3 chords that have the same notes in it, and what you have to do there is just test out each of those chords individually and decide which sounds better. But you have to remember, major sounds a bit happier and minor sounds a bit sadder. Don't worry, you'll find the right chords. For example, both the first and second chord sections of the verse have the notes E and B in it. But instead of repeating the E major chord, which is pretty boring, I made the second chord the G sharp minor because there was also G sharp. So I accentuated the E and the B in the first chord, and then the G sharp and the B in the second chord. You just have to play around with it and get the feel for how you think the song should go. Mini tip number 2. Don't mind the passing notes. Those are basically the notes that the melody doesn't start or resolve on, like filler notes. For example, in the pre-chorus, this D sharp over here, this D sharp is just trying to get from the E to the C sharp, which means I didn't really have to take it into consideration when picking a chord. That's why I was able to pick the E chord. Mini tip number 3. Most of the time, the starting chord or the chord that you first use in the song is the first chord also in the key. That's named after the key as well. For example, I'm in the key of E major, so my first chord is also E major. That's why my song starts with that chord, and that's the most used chord in my song. But that doesn't always apply. Mini tip number 4. To make the sound of your chord progressions better, you can use inversions. Inversions are basically different ways or positions in which you can play a certain chord. Basically, you don't always have to play a chord in this shape. This is a C major because there's a C, an E, and a G. But there's also a G over here, so you can play it in this shape. And it sounds different, but it's the same chord. What are inversions for? Usually, chord changes sound better when the notes are nearer together, so you can basically play any chord in any position as long as you play the right notes. So this is an E to G sharp minor, but it definitely sounds better when I put this D sharp here to make the notes sound closer together. Right? Mini tip number 5. You can use spicier chords. Even in this list, you aren't limited to only major or minor chords. You can use 7th chords, dominant 7th chords, suspended chords, add 9 chords, and so many other chords. But I won't get into this now. For now though, you can, if you want, add those 7th chords in your progressions for some spice. Just use the same logic or the same rules as I mentioned earlier and discussed with picking the chords. And they're listed right here beside the major and minor counterparts. This is an E, but this is an E major 7. Sounds spicier, right? Mini tip number 6. Don't limit yourself to playing whole notes or one note per bar. Have fun with it. The energy and vibe of your song will change in the way you play your chords. Doesn't the vibe of this feel super different from the vibe of this? That's why I chose to use something like this in my song. Just really use your ear and play around with the chords in the chart, because those are the chords which will most likely sound the most awesome over your melody. That's why if you don't like the technique I discussed, just use trial and error with those chords in the chart. Step 6. Adding the bass line. Depending on the type of song you have, you can use any of these strategies or ways to find your bass line. Option 1. Just use the root notes of the chords that you're playing. The root note is the note that the chord is named after. For example, for a G major chord, the root note is G. For the F sharp minor chord, the root note is F sharp, and for an E minor chord, the root note is, of course, an E. Just make sure to put your whole note in a lower octave, or basically the same note but lower. So what you can do is copy the piano that you added, put it into the bass, and then just delete the notes that are not the root note. Since the chord progression is E, C sharp minor, E, and then B, we can just remove everything that's not the root note. So this is the E here, and then this is the C sharp, so remove everything else. And then this is the next E, and then this is the B. So we remove everything. We can make it a lower octave by selecting everything through Command A, then going Option Shift down. So now it's a lower octave. And we have a bass. Option 2. you can still use the root notes of the chords you're playing, but put some sort of a rhythm to it by breaking up the notes. Another thing that you can do is chop up each of these notes that you used and just paste it in. Like, just to make a little rhythm. Tip: you can experiment in using the different octaves and switching between them, even if you're only using the root note. Option 3. You can use the notes in the chord. Under each chord, you can use the notes that you wrote that were in each chord to make the bass line. For this one, I'll show you what I did right here, but basically I copied all the notes from the piano and then I mixed it up and arranged it to make this, just using the notes of the chords. Option 4. You can use the methods above, but experiment with passing notes by ear. Basically, you can use the notes in your chord or the root note, but you can also add notes in the middle that sound like they make sense. Sorry about the dogs, they're just barking there. This adds tension and release to your bass line. Here's how I did this one, but I'm basically adding passing notes that sound like they make sense. Yeah. Option number 5. You can use the pentatonic scale. I won't go into this that much because it kind of involves theory, but the pentatonic scale in any key is basically a collection of 5 notes that would sound really good over any chord or any note in that key. So since you're playing in a certain key, search key of blank pentatonic scale. Like for example me, I'm in the key of E major, so I should search E major pentatonic scale. And the pictures that look like this are very helpful. Okay, when you do have your pentatonic scale, you can basically use all of those 5 notes to make your bass line. It's that simple. Remember, you can still use rhythm and cut up your notes, you can use octaves and passing notes, just have fun with it. These are just suggestions. So I made a quick search in Google and this is the E major pentatonic scale and I just had to experiment with those 5 notes. It went something like this. Also, you can use some notes in the major and minor scale like this, depending on your key. For example, you have the key of E major like me, you can use the E major scale also. It doesn't really matter, even if it's not on the pentatonic scale, it's just the notes in the pentatonic scale tend to sound better. And further than that, they'll sound even better if you use the notes in your chord. So, just experiment with what sounds good. Tip: you can also use the 5 notes in your pentatonic scale in order to make countermelodies, which are basically other melodies that you stack above your melody. You can use this for guitar riffs, for bell sounds, or any other sounds that you want, like if you want a piano melody over your original melody, that would be great because the pentatonic scale is basically a guide of what would sound good in any key. So have fun with it. Step 7. Add guitar. This is an optional step because some songs only have chords, a beat, and a bass line, and that's really fine, but guitar is really great to add if that's not the main instrument that you used yet with the chords. With guitar, you can pluck, solo, strum with one strum, lots of strums, different strums, muted strums, and you can even hit it. Basically, there's a lot of things that you can do with guitar, and I just added it in because I really love it for songwriting, especially in its versatility. Tip: the strumming pattern you use will definitely change the vibe of your song, and some rhythms suit some melodies more than others. You can play the guitar like this, or 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 like this, like this, or like this. You can tell I get a lot of ideas from the guitar. Tip: you can also use the pentatonic scale to figure out melodies with your guitar. You can search for images with the specific pentatonic shapes you need, just like this. Or you can just use the notes that you know, but you're basically almost done with the layout and structure of your song. Here's an example of me recording some guitar. Step 8. Add any extra beats or other things that you'd want to spice it up. For sure, since now you can hear the song in its entirety instrumentally, you maybe would want to add some things that would make it sound more you. Here are some options. Extra beats for when you're building up before a chorus or anything else you'd want to add, bells or ukulele or any other higher end sounding instruments, risers, a choir, string ensemble, sounds from the environment like nature or city sounds, sound effects, vocal chops, add anything really. The choice is yours. Step 9. Make the lyrics. You're almost done with your song, so now all you have to do is pick some lyrics to put over your melody. Either use the melody you made from the beginning if that was a lyrical melody, use the tips in this video to make your own melody, or just jam out to what you made. In my case, my melody was a lyrical melody, so I just had to fill it in with lyrics. So just fill in your melody with lyrics, but if you already made your melody with lyrics in mind, that's awesome for you. Tips for lyrics. First, the verse describes something or tells a story. The pre-chorus rises the energy and develops the story. And it also has less words but longer notes, if that makes sense. And the chorus has the highest energy, often has higher notes, like notes in higher octaves, and is the most catchy. Next, for most, the syllabication meter, which is the pattern of beats in your lyrics, and if your lyrics sound good together, are more important than if the lyrics make sense. Because in order to catch people's attention to care about what you're saying, you have to make your lyrics listenable and singable, if you know what I mean. Next, you can use other sources, like the internet. You can use the thesaurus for synonyms and RhymeZone for when you're running out of rhyming ideas. And you can use other songs for inspiration for how they rhyme and what they talk about. There's really endless possibilities and you can write about anything, so don't hold back. Step 10, the last step, record and mix your song. Yay, you're finally done with your song, and the last thing you have to do is record it. You can record with what you have, like your earphones, and just have fun with it. After that, it may help to mix and master your song, but I won't be getting into that right now. Just fix it and tweak it with how you think it should sound like, and just tweak the sounds to how you think they should be. And if you're confused about anything or have any questions, you can leave a comment down below and I can try to answer them, or someone in the comments can help you out.
Guess you're out late for the 5th time. Hey, but that's okay, I'm still fine. Couldn't wait, I fell asleep at 2. Made me pancakes when the sun rose. Kiss on my head in your work clothes. Do you love me? Now I'm so confused. I got this feeling that you will be leaving tonight. Think you can seal all your plans when you kiss me goodbye, bye. So candy coated, sweet, sweet. The loving you're giving to me. No point in arguing, it's all in your eyes. Don't you act so surprised that I can see your candy coated lies.
And there you have it, we've made a song together starting with just the melody. If you enjoyed this video or if you learned something new, don't forget to press that like button and subscribe if you haven't. See you in the next one! Whoa, mad respect for people who do how-tos and tutorial videos. They're so hard to make and record and memorize. Ah! See you in the next one.